guys, welcome back. This is a follow-up video to one that I did in May called My Favorite Sketchbooks. And at that time, I was showing you some new sketchbooks as well as some ones that I'd already been working in. And I promised that I would do a follow-up video showing what work I'd done over the summer once I'd played around in those books a little more. So you can check out that video called My Favorite Sketchbooks. And these are the books we're going to look into today. So I have my Hahnebuhle sketchbook. It's a watercolor sketchbook that is new. I had not worked with this brand before. So I'll show you inside that one. I have the Nova series beige toned Stillman and Birn sketchbook. So this is a mixed media book with brown pages. And then I have the Handbook Journal Company watercolor book. This is the 300 GSM watercolor book. I've worked with this book before, but not this layout. This one's a really cool one. And then also by Handbook Journal Company, I have the drawing book with the cream toned drawing paper. And then one that wasn't in the other video, but I started using this summer after I was on a retreat, is the Pentalic watercolor book. And this is a nature sketchbook that I've been using for field journaling. So let's dive right into those. This is the Hahnebuhle watercolor sketchbook. It is 200 GSM, I believe, and this is an A6 size. I really like this watercolor sketchbook. The first page I decided to do just a little field journaling study back in May down at Marina Park here in Comox. So I did a shadow trace, a little bit of a color study, and then a tiny flower that was on the plant of this shadow that I did. So it works nicely for that, but mostly I was planning to keep this book for my landscapes, my watercolor landscapes. So these are ones that I do from my imagination based on the coastal landscape here on Vancouver Island. When I do the border, I use this Scotch washi tape, Scotch Expressions. That's my favorite. I like the way that it makes this size of border, as well as it doesn't stick to the pages too much. It seems to work for me. This is another similar little landscape. I like the way the paper behaves. I slightly overworked it here, but it didn't seem to rough up or pill. I usually just work with 1 to 2 washes and then some finer details. This one, I was exploring 2 colors that were new to me from these beam paints, so I didn't really plan it, didn't tape off the edges, just seeing how the colors go onto the page. I have Wet Grizzly, Salish Sea, and then in here I have Glacial Rivers, and so I was going to turn this into an art journaling page, but as happens with different sketchbooks, sometimes I forget to go back to the page and finish it. And then this is a new painting just from this week in the sketchbook as well. So I haven't done a lot of watercolors in here. I like the paper. You can see that it's got a little bit of buckling to it, but it's nothing that bothers me. I think it's great for little studies like this, or for doing a mix of drawing, writing, and painting for a field journal. This is a Stillman and Birn sketchbook, part of the Nova series. I was actually hoping to get the Nova Trio because it has 3 colors of paper in it, but I couldn't find it, so I got the Beige Tone Journal. So this is designed for dry media, light wash, and ink. It's 150 GSM, and it's 5.5 by 8.5 inches. I liked this orientation here because I felt like you could go vertical or you could use landscape. I haven't explored the book as much as I thought I would over the summer. I ended up using my other books, but still I did a little bit of work. So this is white pen on the brown paper, which I really enjoyed. And then this is watercolor mixed with some white gouache, and that shows up nicely as well. Sort of the start of an art journaling page. This one, I was using a mix of watercolor, watercolor pencil crayons, Neocolor 2 pastel, I believe. And then over here, you can see some texture. I tried some clear gesso. So that's an acrylic-based gesso. And then the bright pink here is dry pastel on top of the clear gesso. So I was just exploring how those textures would take. You can see a little bit of buckling, but again, it doesn't really bother me to have some buckling. That's kind of to be expected in mixed media. I really like working with this beige tone background. I think it's got a pretty quality to it, and it pushes you to think a bit about your colors in terms of getting color contrast. So, you know, working with really dark lines so that they're punchy against the background. And I really love the way a bright white looks on this brown paper as well. This one, because I had the dry pastel, I used a spray finish to protect it so it wouldn't smudge on the other page as well. I kind of feel like this could have some words on it, but I've left it for now. Also exploring just having compositions that don't have any words. So we'll see. I might come back to it and add some found poetry or writing with Posca paint pens, but then again, I might leave it. similar in style, but adding a little bit more mixed media to it. I have some white and clear gesso up in here, paint pen writing, that pink chalk pastel again, and I believe this is either a watercolor pencil crayon or a Derwent Intense pencil, and some gold, probably this gold from the Beam paints. And that's it for this journal. So I really haven't explored this one as much as I would like to, but I have a feeling for fall when I'm doing more mixed media layering that this will be a great book for that. This is a watercolor sketchbook by the Handbook Journal Company. I have worked with this sketchbook before, but not in this size. So I have the 8 by 8 inch, or maybe it's 8.5 by 8.5 square one, and I liked the paper. There are 2 weights to it, so I go with the 300 GSM, but this one is, I believe, where does it say? 5.5 by 8.5 inches. So I thought this Panorama was a really interesting shape to work with because I do enjoy landscapes. So here's one of the first ones that I did in it, the first one I did in it, using a couple of washes. I tried out some lifting here too with the brush when it was wet, and it seemed to, the paper behaved really nicely. Again, I'm using the washi tape for the edges to create the nice crisp border, and you can see that I added a little bit of iridescent in the skyline. So I'd planned for this book to be, these very West Coasty landscapes, and it works really nicely for that. I tried it in the other orientation, doing a tree. I'm not loving the colors of how this one worked out, so I might come back to it with another layer, or I might just leave it. Not everything in a sketchbook works out the way we plan. It's a place to experiment. And then here's another landscape, this one from the imagination. I was thinking about a rainstorm. Almost looks like snow because I used silver iridescent paint, watercolor paint. And you can see here when you get a really heavy wet layer, it does bleed a little bit with the washi tape. Sometimes I repurpose my washi tape and use it 2 or 3 times. And so that might be what is happening along here, along the edges. Or sometimes the darker color just pulls to the edge of the tape and you get a bit of a fringe there. But I'm still happy with the way that this paper is performing. So just a couple paintings in it so far, but more to come. I would recommend this journal in any of the sizes. I really enjoy it. This is also by the Handbook Journal Company. It's their drawing sketchbook. I love the size. I love the feeling of the cover. They come in blue, green, and a reddish color. So this is my second time purchasing this book, and it's just great for working in the house, out on the sun deck, or taking to the park with me. So I'll do a bit of a slower flip through on this one, showing you all the ways I use this book. It really is designed for drawing, but of course I paint in it. Mixed media artists can't help themselves. So this is a watercolor page, but really light watercolor, so just using little brush dots, doing a repeat pattern here. I've used it for drawing with paint pens. This is watercolor again, using really light line work. This is drawing outside. This is a sketch page where I was doing a shadow trace of a plant at Philburg Park, and then a little study with a different pen. So this looks like it was a paint pen, and then this one is Faber-Castell permanent pen. So same flower, just this one's shadow and this one's a detailed drawing. I joined a sketch club with some friends, so we've been going outside a lot to the beach or to the parks to do work there. So sometimes I'm adding, in dates and details about the day. I might record which pens I'm using. So Uniposca khaki green pen for this one, Faber-Castell gold pen for this one, and then just doing some little writing about my days. So takes its reference from field journaling, where you're taking notes and drawing as well. This one's with a jelly roll pen. That worked really nicely on this paper. Here I was playing with a view of Goose Spit. The locals will know where that is. And I was playing around with taking the buildings out and just making the landscape a landscape without so many human things in it. A little bit more paint, tiny bit of collage. You can see that I'm continuing with this pattern that's like a mussel shell, but changing the pattern as I go. I think this too I was playing with Cascade Green, which was new to me in this past season, and I was interested to see how this color worked from green into more of a bluey green, and Titanium Buff from Daniel Smith as well, this beige color. Playing around with drawings, putting multiple drawings on one page. So this is a loose drawing of an avocado plant on my sun deck, some buttercups, and I made notes that I was working from a photograph for this one. So this one's really more like a working sketchbook, taking notes, doing drawings from observation, and also writing and doodling. Some pages are messier than others. I don't always work on the back side. You can, but the pages are a little bit thin, so you see through from the other side. A drawing. That one looks like watercolor pencil crayon. More writing. Drawing with probably pens for these ones. Again, Sketch Club, going out and looking at the little boats. Drawing people at the pier. I went down to Philburg Park to the petting zoo with my kids. They have farm animals, and so I really enjoyed working with trying to capture the animals, but they move so quickly that you're forced into doing really quick drawings. So this is with a brush tip pen, and I like how it feels like a calligraphy brush, but you have a pen, so it's easy to travel with. I think my daughter did that one, and then my daughter, 10-year-old, did this page, just sheep from the farm. Chickens, I wrote chickens move fast, so as fast as a gesture sketch can go. It's good for catching those guys. Some leaf rubbings and drawing. I've been doing some work thinking about how I've been feeling recovering from my concussion, which is an ongoing recovery, and I wrote there are many layers to feeling better. That was in July. And I am tired, which also goes along with that. Yeah. Interested in these little people. Little messages to myself. I took a mini course with artist Jessica Swift, and she was encouraging us to write messages that are our truths or messages to ourselves. And this one is, I'm allowed to move and rest. So that's been a theme of the summer. I've been trying to get my body moving more. I'm back to running, but I also require more periods of rest than I did before having a concussion. This one I was able to do a couple layers of paint. So I said it's drawing paper, but it managed these layers, although they're kind of drier layers of watercolor, a little bit gouache paint into them to thicken them up, which seems to work fine on this paper. This one, you can see I'm repeating that same pattern again with the mussel shells. And this one I think is with my new beam paint, the Wet Grizzly. It has both a brownish look and a gold look. And then the splatters on the edge would be this one, which is Glacial Rivers. So two really pretty colors. It's a really subtle page, but I quite like it. This is what I do for meditative painting, where I don't have to think too much about what I'm doing. I'm just allowing my brush to flow, giving myself some time with the medium and some quiet time for myself. Again, Sketch Club. I was at the gardens on Anderton and Comox. I absolutely love going down there. I have a membership that I get each year. And we were at the pond, and I was interested in the shape of the lily pads, but I decided to make it like a pattern and then not do the entire scene. You can always edit. Again, at Anderton Gardens, a rose that was starting to dry up and the petals falling off. So I did it with a brush pen first and then added a little bit of watercolor on top. Playing with some repeat patterns. This was watercolor pencil crayon and then just dragging a brush through it, extending the color. This one you can see buckles a little bit more, but again, it still works for me. I don't mind pushing the paper a little bit. I don't know what was happening here. Sometimes you try something and it just doesn't work. So I added gesso over top, which did buckle it a lot. Perhaps I'll go back and do some writing. This page is watercolor and watercolor pencil crayon and a tiny bit of collage. That one's just from the other day. And this was just from yesterday at Sketch Club. I was trying to do a pattern with the apples. Not all subjects are best for drawing. There wasn't enough detail, so it didn't turn out that well, but I enjoyed my time being outside with the group. And then I drew part of a tree. Again, I like to edit things when I'm drawing, so I drew the top part of the tree and then just left the base. And I did some writing about back to school and fall feelings. So that's the Handbook journal. I would recommend this one for drawing and really light washes. This is a Pentalic watercolor sketchbook. They say it's for multimedia, and they call it extremely heavyweight, natural white paper, 7 by 5 inches, which is a great size for taking outside. I don't often get a spiral bound. This one was given to me. Some people do not like having spiral bound, but I found for the purpose of this, which was field journaling and writing, that the spiral bound is really nice because you can turn it over on your lap and your hand can go across across the page. I think it works quite nicely. The reason why some people don't like a spiral bound is if you want to do an art journal spread, then you can't go from one page to the other. But I like this paper. I'll show you some of my favorite pages. This was done on a retreat in June in Caslow. And this was where we had to find a little square of the earth, I called it my square, and record some of the things we found in this little area. So I have some lichen and a Nootka rose, a shadow trace, a bumblebee, and just little notes about what was in my area. And then we invited a partner to come and find our area based on the drawing and painting. So this book was great for doing both drawings and some watercolor. I didn't really experiment with heavy watercolor on this, but the pages are so thick, I think it would be great for that. I was doing more little notes like that and light washes like this. So this is a shadow trace with a paintbrush watercolor on here, and then writing about the retreat. And we were doing a lot of writing, so this book was great for that. When I got home, I continued to do some writing. This is again at Anderton Gardens, where I did some drawing with a pen first and then adding watercolor to it. So this kind of book is great for that. It's great to take, great size for taking places, and then the spiral bound works really nicely for field journaling. I hope that gave you some ideas about different brands you might want to check out, or just inspired you to open up your journals again. If you are feeling that fear of the blank page, I recommend you check out my latest live stream video called Peaceful Pages, where I give you some prompts that would get you started in your journal. So go take a look at that now, and I'll see you guys soon.